Have you ever spoken something softly under your breath and it came true? As if the universe was listening to your very whisper? What if I told you the key to shaping reality is hidden in what you affirm right before sleep? I recall a night, quiet, dim, filled with doubt, when I stood before my small dresser in my New York apartment. I had little in terms of wealth or proof, but I had something greater, belief shaped into words. I whispered softly to myself, I am already what I long to be. I repeated it not to convince the world, but to awaken the truth within me. And as I did, a warmth spread across my body, as though I stepped into another version of myself. That was the night I first affirmed it and received it. Within a week, the call came. An offer I did not chase, an invitation I did not expect, but it came, precisely as I affirmed, not because I was lucky, but because imagination fused with assumption becomes fate. That night changed everything, and tonight I offer you the same formula. Every affirmation is not a request, it is a decree. When you say, I am loved, you're not hoping for love, you are creating the condition. The spoken word shapes the unseen substance of reality. When spoken with feeling, affirmations become law. The power that created worlds whispers through your consciousness. Your spoken affirmations, when believed as true, are divine commands. It is not a matter of whether they will manifest. It is only when. Most affirm, hoping something will happen, but you must affirm from a place where it already has. This is the essence of assume the wish fulfilled. Declare the end, and the means will organize. Words alone are hollow if imagination contradicts them. When you affirm, you must also see, feel, and live in the inner world where it's already real. This harmony activates manifestation. The subconscious mind does not resist repetition. Through subconscious mind programming, your repeated affirmations carve deep impressions, and what is impressed must be expressed. In the state between waking and sleep, you are closest to the subconscious. Whisper your desire as if it is fulfilled, letting it soak into the silence. This is where reality is reordered. When you speak to yourself during the day, silently or aloud, you are molding events. Those inner conversations are not private. They echo into the structure of your world. It is not your effort, but your acceptance that draws outcomes. When you affirm and assume, you receive, because you have already accepted its reality internally. Every affirmation is a seed cast into the soil of your inner world. Whether it blooms into beauty or barrenness depends not on the words themselves, but on the feeling with which they are sown. It is not enough to say, I am wealthy, while inwardly cowering in lack. The word spoken must be soaked with the conviction that what is spoken is already real. In that space between speaking and believing, between utterance and embodiment, lies the secret. Words have always been more than sound. They are vibrations that imprint upon consciousness. When a man says, I am healthy, he is not merely stating a wish. He is assigning an identity. And identity governs reality. Everything in your external world rises to match the identity you carry within. Speak it once, and the world may not stir. Speak it in truth with persistence and inner certainty, and the world must obey. For you are not waiting on the world to affirm you. You are affirming yourself into the world. You may ask, but how can I speak what I do not see? The answer is simple. Speak only what you choose to see. The great trap is observation. To affirm based on appearances is to remain a servant of circumstance. But to affirm from desire, to declare I am free even when chained by debt, or I am loved even when alone, is to transcend fact and create truth. The world mirrors the inner man. If the inner voice says I have, then the outer form must soon comply. This law works impersonally. It does not discriminate between what is wanted or unwanted. It only echoes what is accepted as true. So beware what you say, even in jest, even in doubt, even in whispers. When you say, "Nothing ever works out for me," you are affirming failure. When you say, "This always happens to me," you are authoring repetition. Every complaint is a prayer. Every reaction is an affirmation. And the world responds not to what you wish, but to what you consistently affirm. To use affirmation rightly is to speak as one who commands the unseen. It is not to beg nor to plead, but to assume the tone of certainty. Speak from the state, not to the state. Don't say, "I will be successful," for that pushes your desire into the future. Instead say, "I am successful," and make peace with the tension. Let your mind stumble, let your senses protest, but do not let your tongue deny what your heart desires. Declare it, say it, repeat it, until even your doubts bow to your word. In my own experience, I have seen miracles arise from quiet, unwavering affirmations. I have watched doors open, people change, and situations dissolved, not through action, but through inner decree. When I affirmed, "This thing is already done," something shifted, not always outside at first, but within. And once the shift within became permanent, the world transformed to reflect it. There was no ceremony, no outward effort, only a quiet authority repeated, morning and night. The spoken word is the tool of the Creator. It calls forth that which is not seen and names it as already present. As the artist uses a brush to shape the unseen into form, the affirmer uses the tongue to carve invisible realities into tangible life. But the brush must be guided by vision. The affirmation must be guided by assumption. To speak from fear is to paint chaos. To speak from love and conviction is to sculpt destiny. So ask yourself now in the privacy of your being, what have I been affirming? What phrase have I rehearsed without noticing? For you are always affirming something. Your dominant self-talk is shaping your path. Change the phrase and you change the pattern. Say, "I am wanted," and the world will want you. Say, "I am powerful," and you will rise with power. Say, "It is already done," and the universe must catch up to your declaration. Affirmations are not empty chants. They are the language of divine command. When you speak them with belief, they rewrite the script of your life. If you wish to transform, begin now, not with effort, but with word. The seed is already in your hand. Plant it, water it daily with feeling, and then stand back and watch the harvest unfold. The voice you speak with is no ordinary instrument. It is the voice of creation, the breath of the divine operating through your human experience. What you say with conviction becomes what you see in time. It is not a matter of influence or luck. It is a law, one as precise as gravity. When you open your mouth and declare something with the full force of belief behind it, you activate currents that shape and reshape the world around you. You are not using your voice merely to communicate. You are using it to command. It is often misunderstood that prayer or affirmation is about pleading for change, but pleading assumes lack. When one pleads, one is still confessing, "I do not have." But when you speak from the position of already having, already being, you speak as the source. The outer world is not the cause. It is the effect. Your voice, your spoken word, must always reflect the state you desire, not the one you observe. That is the key. Speak not as someone hoping, but as someone knowing. Not to convince others, but to realign the self. There is great power in silence, yes, but greater still is the word spoken from silence, from stillness, from the deep conviction that the world responds to your inner tones. Every word carries vibration, and vibration, when sustained and repeated, becomes form. There is no separation between word and world. Your life is speaking itself into existence through the affirmations you say knowingly and unknowingly each day. This is why careless speech is so destructive. To say, I'm always tired is not harmless. It is a command. To say nothing ever works for me is not venting, it is creation. The world is too precise to allow randomness. It is governed by the rhythm of belief, and belief is embedded in words. Change your language and you change your belief. When a man says, I am free, he may still live in the same room, in the same debts, and the same unanswered letters. But something changes in that declaration. It is the claim of authority. It is the seed of a new state. Speak it long enough, feel it deeply enough, and the outer chains begin to dissolve. Circumstance bends to identity, and identity is expressed most clearly through the words, I am. It is not necessary that others agree with what you say. Your affirmations are not made for their ears. They are for the inner ear, the deep subconscious, which does not argue or question, but accepts and executes. Speak with authority, not to convince others, but to imprint your own deeper self. When the inner man accepts the statement, the outer world has no choice but to comply. It is not a negotiation, it is law. There is no special place you must go to for this power to work. You can speak while walking, while washing dishes, while lying in bed. It is the consciousness with which you speak that matters, not the ritual. You may say, I am prosperous, while wearing old clothes and holding an empty purse. But if the feeling is there, if the declaration is infused with inner knowing, you have already begun to rearrange your world. Do not measure the effectiveness of your spoken word by immediate results. Some seeds grow quickly, others take time. What matters is consistency. Speak as if your words are final, as if they carry the authority of destiny. Because they do, each affirmation is like a script handed to the unseen actors of your reality. Once received, they begin rehearsing your future, moving pieces into place, unseen by the rational mind, but felt by the soul. To speak as if you already possess what you desire is not delusion, it is alignment. It is bringing your outer expression into harmony with your inner vision. You cannot wait for evidence to speak truth. You must speak truth to summon evidence. Say, I am healthy before your body changes. Say, I am loved before the partner arrives. There is a sacredness in the words you choose. Treat them not as casual utterances, but as sacred acts. Speak less if needed, but when you speak, speak with intention. Use words to lift, not to linger in the past. Use them to reveal who you are becoming, not to explain who you have been. The world hears you even in silence, but when you speak with faith, the world must listen and respond. So the voice you carry is not a passive gift. It is your creative sword, your shaping wand. It does not require volume, only certainty. Whisper it if you must, but whisper it with the energy of kings and queens. Speak it as if the whole universe hangs upon it, because it does. To speak from the end is to stand where your desire is already fulfilled and look back, not forward. It is to remove the sense of waiting, of distance, of becoming, and instead to occupy the state of having. When you say, I am, you do not ask for permission. You do not anticipate. You declare. You embody. This is the subtle but powerful shift that separates those who create consciously from those who chase endlessly. Many make the mistake of affirming from lack. They say, I want to be wealthy, and in doing so they affirm that they are not. They say, one day I will be free, and bind themselves to the chains of someday. Wanting implies not having. Yearning confirms separation. But when you speak from the end, I am wealthy, I am free, I am healed, you collapse the distance between you and your desire. You dissolve the illusion of time. You become the thing you seek. Creation is not a process of acquiring, it is a process of assuming. You do not get what you wish for, you get what you accept as real. The moment you speak from the state of fulfillment, you announce to consciousness that this is your identity now. And consciousness responds, not to begging, not to effort, but to identification. If you are it, you do not need to search for it. It will unfold from you naturally, inevitably. This is why imagining the end and speaking from it is the most direct path to manifestation, because all states already exist. Every outcome, every version of you already is. You are not creating the state, you are selecting it. And you select it by feeling it real and speaking as though it were already so. Not to deceive yourself, but to awaken the truth of your creative power. The world follows the word, the effect follows the assumption. There is an unseen intelligence that reshapes circumstances to reflect the state you live in mentally. When you say, "It is already done," and feel the relief, the joy, the completion of that truth, the world bends to accommodate that declaration. But if you speak with hesitation, if you continue to monitor outer results for proof, you delay the harvest. Speaking from the end means letting go of how and when. It means choosing to dwell in the unseen long enough for it to become the seen. To do this, one must reverse the habit of looking to the senses for confirmation. The senses will echo your past beliefs until your present assumption becomes dominant. So speak from the end even when nothing agrees. Declare, "I am loved," when the silence feels loud. Say, "I am whole," when the body is in pain. Persist, not because of blind faith, but because you understand that reality is not static. It is fluid, responsive, obedient to your inner stance. This way of speaking is not fantasy. It is fidelity to the unseen. Faith is not believing without evidence. It is speaking and living from the reality that already exists within. You choose it inwardly before you see it outwardly. You claim it as your truth before the world reflects it back. And this claiming, this verbal assumption, is the creative act. Your word is the signal. It is the permission slip. When you speak from the end, you remove contradiction. You move into a state of agreement with your desire, and agreement is power. The world is full of people speaking about what they lack, what they fear, what they resent, and their lives reflect those conversations. But you can speak from the end and alter the script. You can walk into a scene that contradicts everything you've ever known simply because you no longer identify with the old. Try it tonight. As you lie in bed, do not rehearse what you fear. Do not replay the day's disappointments. Instead, speak softly but with conviction. I am exactly where I want to be. It is already done. I am living the life I imagined. Let those words seep into your bones. Let them become more than statements. Let them be your reality. And if you persist in this, the world will catch up. It must. For the end you speak from is the only reality that matters. This principle requires discipline, yes, but it also offers freedom. The freedom to no longer wait. The freedom to no longer struggle. The freedom to no longer explain yourself to a world that cannot see what you already are. Speak from the end, and you will find that the world rearranges itself with astonishing precision to match your voice. Not because you forced it, but because you finally remembered how creation works. Words without feeling are like seeds cast on stone. They fall, they echo, but they do not take root. It is not enough to repeat phrases like a machine, hoping repetition alone will break through the crust of disbelief. For affirmation to hold power, it must be married to imagination. It must be felt. It must be lived within. There is no magic in mere words, no force in formulaic recitation. It is only when the words you speak align with the images you hold in consciousness that you begin to shape reality with certainty and grace. Imagination is the workshop of creation. It is the place where form arises before it is seen. But imagination is also emotional. It is not a dry, technical projection. It is a living experience within the mind. To imagine a thing is to bring it near. To feel it is to make it now. When one affirms, "I am successful," the imagination must support that declaration with a corresponding inner scene. Perhaps it is the feeling of walking into a room with confidence, or seeing a letter of opportunity in your hands, or hearing the congratulations of someone close to you. The spoken word becomes powerful only when these inner images are alive and real. There are many who recite affirmations with no transformation. They speak the words diligently, but their imagination remains filled with lack, with doubt, with scenes of rejection and failure. They say, I am wealthy, but inwardly imagine bills piling up. They say, I am loved, but inwardly play out the loneliness they fear. In such cases, there is a contradiction between speech and imagination, and the imagination always wins. For the world is shaped not by words alone, but by the image and feeling that support them. This is why imagination must match affirmation. The two must agree. When you say, I am, you must see yourself as that which you declare, and you must feel it, not vaguely or distantly, but intimately, as though the event has already occurred. This is the art of assuming the wish fulfilled. It is not pretending, it is knowing. It is sinking so deeply into the reality of your desire that the outer world feels secondary, irrelevant, already changed. The creative power within you does not respond to effort or strain. It responds to unity. When the thoughts you think, the words you say, and the images you hold all point in the same direction, manifestation becomes inevitable. It no longer requires force or repetition, it simply unfolds, because the pattern has been formed. The inner world is the mold, the outer world is the clay. Align imagination with speech, and the clay must take shape. There is no need for elaborate rituals or external signs. Your imagination is the only altar you need. It is here that you practice living in the end. It is here that you test your declarations. If your words say one thing, but your inner scenes say another, you must choose which to keep. The world does not listen to surface noise. It listens to the inner conviction. So the question is not, what are you affirming, but what are you imagining while you affirm? To feel it real is to give life to the unseen. It is to step beyond the evidence of the senses and dwell in a world that responds only to your assumption. This is not about fantasy or self-deception. It is about aligning yourself with the creative law of consciousness. You are not faking something into existence. You are selecting the version of reality you wish to live, and you are doing so by becoming it inwardly first. It is a great discipline to monitor both speech and imagination, but it is the discipline that leads to freedom. If you find yourself affirming success while imagining failure, pause. Redirect the image. Infuse the scene with life. Feel the joy of it, the relief, the excitement. Let your heart beat faster. Let your breath catch. Let the imagined moment become more real than the room around you. That is when the affirmation takes hold. That is when the creative process is complete. You are not separate from what you desire. It already exists in another dimension of consciousness. And your way of reaching it is not by effort or struggle, but by assuming the state mentally, emotionally, and verbally. Speak the word, see the image, feel the state, and persist until the world no longer questions what you've become. It is not about long hours or perfect technique. It is about sincerity, about emotional alignment. The moment your affirmation and your imagination say the same thing, a new reality is born. Not someday, not later, but now, in the unseen. So let your affirmations be alive. Let them breathe. Let them sing with feeling and vision. Let them rise from a place of knowing. And when they do, the whole structure of your world will begin to shift, silently, faithfully, in accordance with your inner alignment. The subconscious does not reason, it does not filter, it does not ask whether what you say is good, bad, right, or wrong. It accepts what is impressed upon it with feeling and repetition. This is why the mind of man is not a passive observer, but an active builder. Whatever you consistently impress, whether by emotion, imagination, or spoken word, the subconscious receives as instruction. And once received, it begins to unfold that instruction as experience. You may not always realize it, but your life today is the harvest of yesterday's assumptions. Some conscious, some deeply buried beneath your awareness. Every repeated thought, every emotional reaction, every inner conversation becomes a seed dropped into the fertile soil of the subconscious. Over time, that seed germinates, and without your deliberate attention, it takes root and grows into events, circumstances, and outcomes. The subconscious is impartial, but it is perfectly faithful. It reflects what you believe, not what you want. This is the reason repetition holds such power. Not because of the number of times a phrase is said, but because of the feeling that builds with each repetition. Repetition creates familiarity, and familiarity breeds belief. Belief, once impressed deeply enough, moves the subconscious to act, to attract, to produce, to organize reality according to its impression. This is not magic, it is structure. It is spiritual law. If you were to speak a truth once, but with no emotional backing, the subconscious might register it as a fleeting idea, easily displaced by opposing thoughts. But if you say the same truth again and again, especially with feeling, especially with vision, something happens. The mind begins to consider it as real. The boundary begins to dissolve, the subconscious accepts the new command, and life begins to arrange itself accordingly. This is how deeply ingrained habits of thought become our destiny. It is not that we consciously choose limitation, but that we allow the repetition of fear, doubt, and lack to dominate our inner speech. And what is repeated, the subconscious must assume is desired. The language of complaint, when repeated, becomes the instruction to maintain undesirable conditions. The story told over and over again becomes the blueprint for what comes next. But just as the subconscious accepts the negative, it also welcomes the positive with the same obedience. When one begins to affirm a new reality with persistence and conviction, the old pattern must eventually give way. A man who has lived in poverty may affirm wealth, and though the world does not change overnight, his inner assumptions begin to shift. The more he affirms, the more the subconscious begins to let go of the old image and adopt the new one. And once the new image is established, the results must follow. This is not blind hope, it is the outcome of spiritual alignment. You are not trying to force change, you are establishing a new premise, and the subconscious is carrying out its natural function, to express in form what is impressed upon it in thought. To say, I am confident each day with sincerity will, in time, dissolve the habit of insecurity, not because the words are magic, but because the repeated impression reshapes the internal framework. The key is not to affirm with tension, but with steadiness. Let the repetition become part of your rhythm. Speak your affirmations in the morning, not with desperation, but with calm authority. Say them at night, not as a ritual, but as a reminder of what is real within you. Let them become familiar, even habitual, until the words no longer feel foreign. At that moment, you are no longer trying to convince yourself. You have already convinced the subconscious, and the creative process is underway. This is the beauty of simplicity. You do not need great intellect, vast resources, or dramatic action. You need only the willingness to impress upon yourself the state you desire through repetition and feeling. The subconscious listens to what you say when you are emotionally involved, and it builds what you rehearse most often. So if you repeat, I am strong, I am free, I am abundant, with emotion and vision, that state begins to dominate, and when it dominates, it expresses. There is a rhythm to all manifestations. The seed does not bloom in the moment it is planted, but the subconscious, once it receives the seed repeatedly, nurtures it in silence. It draws people, circumstances, ideas, and conditions to you in a way that no outer force can. And when the appointed time comes, what you affirmed with persistence appears as fact. Do not underestimate the power of the quiet repetition. You may not see the shift immediately, but rest assured, it is happening. You are not waiting on the world to change. The world is waiting on you to finish the impression. Once you do, the subconscious will obey, as it always has, and your spoken word will become your lived experience. There is a sacred moment each day when the veil between the conscious and the subconscious grows thin, when the outer world grows dim and the inner world begins to rise. That moment is the twilight between wakefulness and sleep. In that delicate interval, the mind is most receptive, most open, most vulnerable to suggestion. And what you affirm in that state is not merely heard, it is absorbed. It becomes the command issued from the conscious to the subconscious. And once received, the subconscious begins to move in quiet obedience. The great tragedy is that most people waste this moment rehearsing fears, regrets, doubts, or complaints. They review what went wrong, what they don't have, what they dread for tomorrow. And in doing so, they fall asleep, impressing the subconscious with the very reality they wish to escape. Sleep is not the time for mental disorder. It is the time for inner instruction. The hours of slumber do not silence the creative power. They intensify it. For it is in sleep that man continues to create without resistance. When you drift into sleep, you do not cease to imagine, you imagine more freely. And if you enter that state repeating affirmations of your fulfilled desire, the subconscious receives those words as truth. It does not question in that moment. It does not evaluate based on what your senses reported during the day. It listens, it records, it accepts. This is why the final thoughts you carry into sleep are the most powerful impressions you make. To affirm before sleep is to plant the seed when the soil is softest. The conscious mind, so often cluttered with doubts and distractions during the day, begins to fade. And in that quiet, the subconscious stands alert, waiting for the direction it will carry out during the night. If you whisper, "I am secure, I am loved, I am successful," with sincere feeling as you fall into sleep, those words settle deeply into the subconscious and begin the process of externalization. It is not necessary to speak loudly, nor is it required to speak endlessly. What matters is focus, feeling, and belief. If the mind drifts, gently bring it back. Let the words become a lullaby, a soft repetition that leads you inward. Let the phrase, "It is done," or "I am fulfilled," or "All is well," become the doorway through which you enter the sleep state. And once you do, you will find that your dreams begin to align with those words and your waking life soon follow. This practice is not new. It is as ancient as consciousness itself. All transformation begins in the unseen, and the best time to sculpt the unseen is when the outer world no longer demands your attention. The man who controls his last thoughts at night controls the direction of his life. He is no longer the victim of circumstance because he no longer rehearses it in the silence. He becomes the author of new experience simply by choosing the tone of his mind as he descends into rest. Do not confuse simplicity with ineffectiveness. The most profound creative acts are subtle, soft, and often overlooked. Yet night after night, you have the opportunity to revise, to redirect, to affirm not what is, but what is desired. If repeated nightly, even the most persistent patterns begin to shift. For the subconscious does not need force. It needs consistency. It needs clear, repeated instructions, free of contradiction, free of doubt. Begin the practice tonight. As you lie down, release the events of the day. Do not judge them. Do not replay them. Turn instead to what you choose to become. Speak the word quietly, lovingly, as if speaking to a child who believes everything you say. Because the subconscious is that child, innocent, trusting, eager to please, and it will take whatever you offer as gospel. It will not say, "This isn't true." It will say, "This must be true," for you have impressed it with emotion. Many say their affirmations during the day, but see no change. Why? Because they cancel them at night. They may say, "I am healthy in the morning," but then go to bed worrying about symptoms. They may affirm wealth, but fall asleep fearing bills. The subconscious cannot serve two masters. It will follow the dominant impression, and the dominant impression is often the final one before sleep. So take these hours seriously. Do not let your last words be careless. Do not let your last thoughts drift into fear. Take hold of your creative power in that sacred interval and use it with reverence. Speak only what you want to see, feel only what you want to live, and do so with the certainty that what is impressed now will be expressed soon. In time, this practice becomes natural. You will find your mind drifting toward your desire, not because you are trying, but because the subconscious has accepted it as familiar. And once it is familiar, it becomes normal. And once it becomes normal, it becomes visible. Let each night become a ritual of creation. Let each affirmation before sleep be a step toward the life you have chosen. And as you sleep, know that the work is being done, not by effort, but by the law that never fails, a law that hears your whispered word and builds your world around it. Your inner conversations, the silent dialogue you hold with yourself throughout the day, are more than mere thoughts. They are the architects of your reality, the invisible scripts that your subconscious follows to the letter. Often unnoticed, these conversations shape your beliefs, your feelings, and ultimately your external world. Every moment you engage in self-talk, whether hopeful or doubtful, encouraging or critical, you are setting the stage for what is to come. It is a common mistake to believe that only spoken affirmations carry power. But the mind does not differentiate between words said aloud and those whispered quietly within. The inner voice is just as potent, often more so, because it is uninterrupted and constant. When you think, "I can't do this," or "I am not enough," you are issuing commands just as real as those spoken into the air. And the world responds in kind. It is not the words others hear, but the words you believe that construct your life. This silent scripting is continuous. From the moment you awaken until you close your eyes, your mind weaves narratives about yourself, others, and your circumstances. These narratives form the foundation of your identity. If your inner conversations are filled with fear, limitation, and lack, your world will reflect fear, limitation, and lack. If they are filled with confidence, abundance, and joy, your world aligns with those qualities. The universe, impartial and obedient, acts as a mirror to your inner discourse. Becoming aware of these inner conversations is the first step to mastery. Observe without judgment. Notice the recurring themes, the habitual phrases, the underlying tone. Are you speaking as a victim, as a champion, or as a witness? Many carry unconscious scripts, learned from childhood or society, that no longer serve their highest good. These scripts replay like old records, dictating reactions and shaping outcomes. The power to rewrite them lies within your conscious attention. To change your reality, you must change your inner conversation. Replace doubt with assurance, replace fear with faith. When you find yourself repeating, "I am stuck," pause and consciously affirm, "I am moving forward." When the mind whispers, "This is too hard," respond with, "I am capable and strong." It is not about forcing the mind into silence, but guiding it toward alignment with your true desire. The subtlety of inner conversation makes it challenging but also profound. Unlike external affirmations that can be scripted and rehearsed, inner conversations are spontaneous and reactive. They arise naturally in response to situations, emotions, and thoughts. Yet with practice, you can steer these dialogues. You can cultivate an internal environment rich with hope and clarity rather than confusion and despair. One effective method is to cultivate a mental habit of self-encouragement. Whenever negative or limiting thoughts arise, gently interrupt them and replace them with affirming phrases. This is not denial, but redirection. A conscious choice to feed the subconscious with empowering narratives. Over time, these new narratives become dominant, rewriting the blueprint of your identity and, consequently, your life. Remember, the subconscious does not argue. It accepts what it hears most frequently. So when your inner conversations shift toward positive, aligned, and present tense language, the subconscious adjusts its responses. This leads to a subtle but powerful transformation in how you perceive opportunities, challenges, and relationships. Doors begin to open and obstacles appear less formidable because your internal script has changed. Your inner conversations also influence your emotional state. Thoughts laced with optimism generate feelings of hope and motivation, which in turn reinforce positive thinking. Conversely, pessimistic inner talk fosters anxiety and despair, creating a cycle that limits growth. By consciously shaping your internal dialogue, you cultivate emotional states that support your manifestation. It is important to approach this process with kindness toward yourself. Inner conversations are deeply ingrained, and change requires patience. Do not judge yourself harshly for old patterns. Instead, view the process as an unfolding journey, a gentle unfolding toward your higher self. Celebrate small victories, such as catching a negative thought or replacing it with a hopeful one. Ultimately, your life is the sum of your inner conversations made manifest. The thoughts you nurture in silence become the reality you experience aloud. The power to change your world lies not in external circumstances, but in the way you speak to yourself within. Harness this silent dialogue, and you harness the creative force that shapes your destiny. It is not the magnitude of your effort that determines what you receive, but the depth of your acceptance. The universe responds not to struggle, but to surrender. The surrender that comes when you have already accepted your desire as fulfilled within. When you affirm and assume, you step into a state of allowance, where resistance falls away and the flow of manifestation begins. The law does not reward exertion, it honors alignment. Many labor under the misconception that to manifest is to work harder, to push, to strive against obstacles, yet this striving often creates tension that blocks the very reality desired. The true power lies in ceasing to fight and beginning to embody the state of having. When you say, "I have it," and feel it deeply, you are no longer separated from your desire by time, circumstance, or doubt. You become a magnet, drawing what you have already embraced inwardly. Effort is the outer expression of inner doubt. When you must fight for what you want, you betray a lack of faith in the unseen working on your behalf. But when you accept fully, when you embody the state of your wish fulfilled, you align with the creative current that moves effortlessly toward realization. It is a shift from doing to being, from chasing to receiving. The moment you affirm and assume, you grant permission to the universe to deliver. You release control over the how and when and place your trust in the invisible workings of creation. This trust is not passive resignation but active surrender. It is an understanding that you have done your part by becoming the one who already possesses your desire, and now it is time to let the unseen arrange the circumstances. Resistance is the subtle force that keeps many trapped in the cycle of wanting without having. Resistance arises from disbelief, from clinging to past conditions, from fear of change. It manifests as impatience, worry, and mental struggle. But when you live in acceptance, resistance dissolves. You find peace in the present moment, knowing that the future is already yours. This peace becomes a fertile ground where manifestation grows. To embody acceptance is to live as though your desire is not a distant dream, but your current reality. It is to move, speak, and think in harmony with that reality. It is to trust the process without needing constant evidence. This state attracts not only material conditions, but the confidence, relationships, and opportunities that correspond to your fulfilled desire. Many fail to realize that the law of manifestation is impartial and exact. It does not discern between what you think you want and what you truly accept. If your inner state is one of lack, effort, or resistance, that will be mirrored in your external life. But if your state is one of calm, confident acceptance, the external world must align to that state. It obeys without question. This principle liberates you from the exhausting cycle of struggle. It invites you to rest in the knowing that what you desire is already yours. The universe is not against you, it is waiting for you to join it in this state of acceptance. Once you do, the manifestations flow naturally, like water following the path of least resistance. Consider this. When you affirm and assume, you are not asking for something new to come into existence. You are recognizing what already exists in the realm of consciousness. Your role is not to create, but to acknowledge. This acknowledgement changes your vibration, your energy, and in turn, changes the conditions around you. Living in acceptance requires vigilance against doubt and mental chatter. It calls for a steady focus on the end result, rather than the current appearance. This focus is not blind optimism, but a deep conviction, rooted in inner knowing. It is a discipline of the mind and heart, a constant return to the state of fulfillment, regardless of external circumstances. By practicing this acceptance, you become a beacon of certainty. Your energy shifts from scarcity to abundance, from confusion to clarity, from resistance to flow. This shift impacts not only your reality, but also those around you, creating a ripple effect of manifestation and transformation. In summary, manifestation is less about effort and more about inner surrender. It is less about forcing outcomes and more about embracing the reality of your desire now. The law responds not to how hard you try, but to how deeply you accept. When you affirm and assume with full acceptance, you step into the creative power that effortlessly brings your desires into form. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the power of affirmation and manifestation. Remember, the key is not in wishing or struggling, but in confidently affirming and fully accepting the reality you desire. Your words, your imagination, your inner conversations, they are the silent architects of your life. When you align them with feeling and unwavering belief, you step into the creative force that shapes your world effortlessly. Trust this process. Embrace your power within and watch as the unseen unfolds perfectly into your experience. Keep affirming, keep assuming, and receive the abundant life that is already yours. Thank you for watching.